All right, good afternoon. It's been, again, just another, one after another, really great panels. Thank you so much for all the insights, and continue with the questions, please. There's no silly questions. Just looking forward to maintaining all the networking and learning from one another. So with that, we'll begin with our next joint talk, which is titled Developing a Suite of AR Tools for JLG's Global Product Portfolio. And I'm joined by our two distinguished speakers, Annie Eaton. Annie Eaton is immersive content producer specializing in engaging and interactive VR and AR experiences. She currently serves as the CEO of Futurus, an Atlanta-based software development company that she founded in 2014. In 2020, she expanded her portfolio and opened Amoebus Labs, hopefully I'm pronouncing that okay, a VR-focused game studio where she is the executive producer. And joining her is Korry Kobel. Korry is the Senior Director of Global Product Development for JLG's Connected Solutions platform. This platform includes JLG's Global Technical Publications Group and a dedicated group of employees responsible for developing innovative, the Internet of Things solutions for JLG's equipment, including mobile apps, telematics, interactive service, schematics, and advanced battery monitoring, just to name a few. So I'll let both of them expand on that, but welcome to the stage, and we can't wait to look forward to your talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, you can clap.
There we go.
Clap.
Yes. Thank you, Annie, for that applause, because that's all for you.
Yeah, oh my gosh, no. Well, thank you all for being here today. We're really excited to share quite a journey with all of you. I know in the description we talked about that we'll be going through things like taking something from prototype to global deployment, what it's like to actually be the one to bring something to life within a large organization and be that champion, and then how to also bring these different uses for augmented reality technology into a single cohesive experience. So we'll get into all of that and hopefully answer some questions for you as well. Anything you'd like to add before we dive in?
Just for folks that aren't quite as aware, I guess JLG makes construction equipment. You'll see some examples in the presentation here, but as some of you may not be aware, the construction industry's not always known for being a tech leader. So some of our experiences and things I think are unique, and look forward to chatting a little bit about them. So. Excellent.
Well, first we're going to give you an overview of the project itself, and just to give you a little, I guess, timeline, this has been live, publicly available since summer of 2020, and it was actually a really great time to deploy an AR tool globally. We didn't know that that was going to be the case necessarily, but there are some tools in here which we'll share with you that were especially helpful when people couldn't meet to see Korry's products in person. Yep. We did distribute it globally. It's a public, free to download and free to use experience for iOS and Android, and it's also available on iPads as far as tablets are concerned. We have a few different tools in here, and I know Korry will go kind of into how they I guess, affect your customer. So do you want to talk about the AR 3D product viewer first?
Sure, yeah, and I'd say globally, JLG's half of roughly an $8 billion company, Oshkosh Corporation. So our products, as you can see, just kind of skipping ahead, we've got a couple hundred different products across the globe where we're trying to serve this information to our customers. But so these tools, I'd say they span from understanding the product from a sales perspective. So we have a couple in the AR machine, and there's also accessories and options. So what we look at is how can we deliver information that our customers have already deemed important and valuable to them. So when we embarked on this with Annie, one of the key things that we looked at was what is the information that is most appropriate for the actual goal is us to step into this AR world. So half of the battle being, what is it you're trying to solve? Using information that's already existing for a large part and your customers have already deemed valuable, that big hurdle of trying to convince somebody to go step into this new medium, if you will, is, I would say, the hurdle's lessened. So that AR 3D viewer is for primarily sales and that sort of market exposure. So, because it's some of these products you're trying to understand, is the door big enough, right? Will the machine fit through the door? Can I literally maneuver this product to get back into the area that needs to have the work done? Can you reach the ceiling? Can you reach the walls and things in the space that it needs to be? So, so that's that one.
Yeah. I was just going to say, that does touch on sales and planning. So moving on to more of an operational perspective.
Yeah, and that's we also look at, my technical publications team is also part of this. That's where a lot of this information came from. So understanding how the machines are used, being used globally on a diverse work site, especially sometimes in the Middle East, you can have half a dozen or more languages being spoken on one job site, where if with using the augmented reality engine to overlay that engineering data, the 3D model, and then the user can literally just click on the different functions to understand in their native tongue. You say up to 20 languages there. Again, already existed, is in the operations manuals, but they can then understand how this product is operated and as a refresher.
Yes, and in addition to the controls, we also have decals that you can scan per machine and then see that in your native language as well. So then the last piece of, I guess, the end user that we've been focusing on is on the service maintenance technician side of things.
Right, so that's, those couple there in the middle about operators. And the decals, there's ISO images. I think that may not be quite as intuitive. When you get on a lot of different products, these ISO standard images can be maybe not as forthright to everyone. So just being able to see that, it automatically recognizing, you just click on it and it gives you the description in the native tongue again. And then the inspection assistant, that's the step into the service side. And actually, on the next slide, I think is whenever we're going to talk a little bit about the prototyping and whatnot. We had two for the service teams as well. I think one of the advantages of doing the prototyping, understanding the scope, we realized that it was maybe a bit ambitious to try and add in that extra service tool. Oops, that messed up. And this inspection assistant, it's part of their daily job, right? So these technicians have thousands of machines that they have to do an inspection based on regulatory. So for compliance, they have to do these annual inspections. So this is an example of we have paper today that they use, or we did, and then that digitization of their daily processes. They get to walk through these inspections. They can take photos now, so you're integrating this basic process. You can then integrate notes and photos, and then they generate that report, and they can send it back into their branch for digital storage.
So we are going to move into talking about that process from the prototype that Korry mentioned a moment ago, and what all kind of changed in that thought process. Before we do, I have to compliment Korry here, because there might be other brands and organizations wanting to do this type of work, and being from the technical side and someone who's actually implementing it, they were smart enough to really think about a thorough prototype at the beginning. I cannot explain how valuable that was. A lot of people want to skip it, and it's a horrible idea to skip it. So I just have to give him kudos here while we're on stage being recorded, that be like him, please.
I appreciate it. That's engineers, especially engineers that build products like this. We definitely don't just throw it into production. We know we get burned quick if you do that.
But how did the inception of this start all the way back? Because I know the prototype was done in 2019, but we started this even before that. It was 2017 was this week we started talking about this project.
So, I mean, in my 20 years at JLG, I started in product development, and I was in sales for almost 10 years. So I got to call on our customers across the United States and a little bit globally as well, but really understanding what information is out there that they're trying to use and consume, and some of the challenges that they have of, they rent, most of our equipment gets sold into the rental channel. And when you understand those challenges of they're trying to, their day is not just booms, scissors, and telehandlers, right, that our products are. They're trying to fill up their entire fleet and their entire order book, if you will, with their customers, and the different demands hit them, throughout the day. So how can we get that information into their hands as quick as possible? And it's, I think having those relationships is a good way that you understood, an opportunity to maybe use some different technology to help them there.
Yeah, and when we did start with the prototype, just to give kind of a technical timeline, the prototype actually was done completely in Unity. At the time, we had leveraged Vuforia within Unity. While that was really great for the prototype, just because of the type of content, and I don't know if we mentioned this earlier, but even though it is called JLG AR, it is quite obviously a very augmented reality focused app. We like to see it as an enhancement, not the sole focus. The sole focus was getting the information that you already have to the people who are using your equipment and machines in an easier format for them to have ready at their fingertips. So because it was so information heavy, between the prototype and version 1 that was released to the public, we actually ended up migrating the project over to Xamarin, which is a Microsoft framework or platform, whatever you want to call it, and leveraging the native integrations with ARKit and ARCore. Moving beyond that also into 2.0, which is in production right now, about to be released, we ended up making a change on Android because Sceneform and oh my gosh, blanking, yes, Scene Core and AR Core, thank you, are no longer as supported as they should be. And one of them has gone open source, and then there's limited updates for the other. So we ended up starting to use Unity as a library as our 3D renderer within Xamarin. It's been a challenge of its own, but it's moving into, I guess, a future in which we feel we can scale this even further.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that having a great partner like Annie is understanding the challenges of the vision that us as an organization are trying to deliver. There's a massive amount of content, like she said, that is actually the primary amount of information that's in there. The AR part is a supplement. I think that's part of the reason why it's been successful. We have all the machine specs and all that information that is commonly consumed. That's where I talk about that already identified information. And then the AR is a supplement to that. And we used it differently across those 5 different modules. Sometimes it's optional. Other times it's pretty key to making it work. But I think that's a good part of how she's kept me from getting too crazy, and she even, I think, used one of my sounds I would always make whenever I'd say it just needs to drop out there. So
you would always make the sound on calls, and we ended up sourcing a sound effect that sounded like that and threw it in there. We like to keep it spicy. So is there anything, I guess I will ask you as a large brand, that you learned from prototyping to version 1, now version 2, that you could share with other people who may be in your position?
I think, one of the key things we did is our approach, in prototype was just trying to get the demystify the tech. How can it be applicable to our, our industry? So that's how you kind of get that buy off. And I'd say, going across those different customer groups, from service to sales and training, not only do you not have to, by spreading that out, you don't have to convince 100% of one group, right? So if you get 50% of those 3 or 4 different groups, you then are not only spreading out your opportunity for feedback, your opportunity for adoption, but it really helped us in trying to identify how should we change this in the future, because that's what we always like to say is, this is our first step. We want to learn and be able to integrate that feedback into the next versions. And that first iteration, I'd say the reason we had the modules broke up was to really explain to folks what these tools were. And we've, with version 2.0, Annie's helped us transition this to more of a, JLG app, right? Like you have your fleet, and in essence, it's more of how the folks think of actually managing the products. And this is, I'd say, now more closely mirrored to match that. So it's been part of the success.
Yes. And I do want to make sure we have time to touch on just how we've been able to leverage similar models, different assets that may go across these different purposes. So as Korry mentioned earlier, sales, operations, and service are the 3 end user groups. So we've been able to take the machines and use them in different ways. So of course we do have our product visualization, but with an inspection, we're able to use those same models to be able to overlay that onto your physical machine to line up these call outs when you're doing your inspection, and maybe you don't know where the next part of it is, and it can guide you in that direction. So we're trying to find ways to cross over and leverage the resources we already have for multiple different purposes, and I think that's also been helpful for just expanding the reach of this app, but also saving resources for the business.
Right, and that's, all of these models existed. A lot of times the engineering all of these models and stuff get created, then you use the 3D, and all you do is make 2D prints, at least at our company. Some have moved to 3D type prints, but this is in essence a way to reuse those models, continue them out into the public and with our customers. But I'd say that occlusion tool is one that I think you guys had to put a little extra work into. I kind of pushed them. It's a lot of times knowing that if I can only get my lift, if you will, here, and if I need to reach that wall over there, with the states that we have saved in the model, you're able to place the machine in the spot and then draw this box out to be able to understand, can I actually reach it, right? And some of them, we stuck with just kind of like the smaller boom lifts, but once you get into some of the bigger, we have boom lifts that go up to 185 feet in the air. So that's where it gets interesting to know if you can set something and then walk a distance to see if you're going to be able to reach this surface is pretty interesting.
Yeah, version 2.0 does include some of the bigger ones. We haven't gotten up to the 185 footer, but I have been up inside that one, and it is very cool.
Yeah. You can drive it from that height too.
I do not care to drive it from that height. It was scary enough as is. Yeah. So I know I definitely want to leave some time for questions. Did you have anything else you wanted to touch on before we open it up to the audience?
No, I would say I think one of the things that we talked about for, how do you get the, traction, if you will, inside of a large company for sort of things. I think the biggest thing is, find that subject matter expert that can speak to, get that value, communicated. Don't be too ambitious, right? Like you reuse a lot of the information that existed. And because there's a surprising amount of work that you have to do even when you think you've got, I'm sure as you all know, but if you think you have it mostly done, there's still a ton of work that has to be put in place to launch it. So I think that was good.
Great.
Open up to some questions.
Yeah, I'll leave these visuals up. Did anyone have any questions? Not sure if this beautiful microphone is live or not, but any takers?
So I have to believe that you guys learned a ton about each other's industry during this process, and that must have been amazing, because I know learning about your industry was probably great for Annie and vice versa.
That's right, yeah.
What have you seen around, through the use of these tools, and the impact on safety, on reduction of safety incidents? I mean, have you been able to quantify that at all, or kind of what's the general sense of the impact on safety?
It's one of those intrinsic benefits we're trying to drive towards, right? It's hard to quantify with this level of scope that we've launched so far if we're making a difference. But a lot of these regulations exist in our industry for these annual safety, for the training and operation and familiarization towards safety. I mean, that's what they're there for, those regulations. But you've touched upon, I think, one of the things that it is a bit of a challenge for us, and it's how do you get the right feedback? And as you launch something like this, one of the things we've talked about is how can we get feedback from those users in an easier fashion to avoid this whole, I guess I call it echo chamber continuous development, right?
And it's a little more difficult as well because like a lot of the large companies that are using it for safety are using it for their internal employees. This experience is pretty much not for their buyers, which are rental companies, but they are for the rental company's customers. So by having like a 2 degree of separation from the end user, it has been a bit more challenging than, it might be if we could literally walk around the hall and talk to Bob, who has been using it, but we're trying to work on some ways to get that feedback. Anything else?
I think this has been great. I just had a follow-up question, and you kind of touched on that when we're going from B to B to then C. Mm-hmm. How are you looking to kind of maybe grow these types of experiences to maybe scale beyond what you've done now? Like, what's next for you guys?
I would say probably making sure the content is as filled out as it can be. So with all 5 of the amazing tools that we've been able to create, only certain tools are supported for certain machines. There are several that encompass all of them, but the feedback that we've been receiving has been like for all of it to be in the app. So that driving content expansion is probably the biggest goal right now. I don't know if you have any other major ones.
Yeah, I mean, that's, some of the near-term things to fill out. I think long-term is a look at like my entire group's responsibility, trying to understand how we can make that digital experience, be more all-encompassing so that daily, again, those daily lives, how can we digitize individual aspects to make it useful? And then, again, expanding that across more of those interactions with the products. as you look at connected vehicles and things of that nature, bringing all that in as one is, I'd say, on the horizon.
Yes.
So this has been very much sort of a self-serve, you giving the app to the users that have the lifts. How does this transition into like tech support, customer support, as you're then trying to troubleshoot remotely with actual problems that can't be solved within the app?
That was part of the prototype.
So that was part of the prototype. That's the part when you start looking across, the different, like you talk about customer support, right? The levels of complexity, start to build rapidly whenever you're trying to involve. And now you've got IT involved with all the phone systems and then the customer support and then training customers. So that level of a complex offering, if you will, it gets a little bit trickier. And we did it as part of the prototype. That was one of those pieces that we cut out. But I would say that, that is one of the use cases that continues to come up. And how can we use that augmented, through the camera and whatnot of the phone and mobile device to help with those troubleshooting and whatnot. That's one of those, I'd say, on the horizon type problems for us to fix.
Absolutely. I think we might be out of time. It's counting up, so we
Oh.
will stop talking now.
Thank you, Annie, and Korry, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.